This is the first election in Singapore history where the daily mainstream news media are 100% government funded. We are now the only advanced industrial democracy in the world where there isn't non-government running daily news. We're the only one.
All the podcasters or content creators who are doing election-related coverage have been briefed about if there is any stuff that is going out. It has to go out before cooling off day 2359, before the 2nd of May. I guess that makes it the fact that Rishi Report is now a legit report, man. It's not just a bunch of clowns, comedians.
Right. You're part of the mainstream.
Oh, man.
You're part of the problem.
What's going on, everyone? Thanks a lot for joining us on another very special episode of the Rishi Report SG60 podcast series. Those of you who have been supporting the show since 2020, thank you very much for that. You know that we typically make fun of the news. We turn some headlines into punchlines. It is a show where we serve up broken news by broke comedians. We take a break from all of that because it is election season and now there's only one broke comedian in the studio. That's me. I'm joined by a very special guest. He is an academic, a scholar in the fields of media and politics. Please welcome Professor Cherian George. Thanks for being here, Prof.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thanks. I mean, can I just share the most important information while you're here? Is it okay? Because Prof. George was my first ever journalism professor in Wee School of Communication.
And I set you on the wrong path.
You sent me on the correct path of doing jokes.
Avoiding journalism.
Instead of news. Oh, man. You're the reason why I'm not a reporter.
Can I share my memory of you?
Oh, boy.
And I have to confess, it was not in the classroom. Okay, I don't remember you in the lecture room.
Because I was not there.
What I remember is that when I leave the building, at the back of the lecture theatre, the driveway there, there'll be a bunch of guys hanging out, and you would be one of them.
Oh, boy.
Right? And I've always wanted to ask you,
Ask me.
About that group, right? Because I was too cool too uncool to feel the vibe or to understand the situation. I've always wanted to ask you, is it because you were too cool for school, right? Or is it because you were outcast?
Definitely number two.
Right? Although I do feel there's a fine line between the two. And I suspect you are kind of straddling the line.
I was someone who I think, if I look at it in a positive way, I was ahead of my time.
That's a good way to put it.
That's how I will put myself to sleep at night. But I think more realistically, I couldn't wake up in time for class. I'm so sorry about that. But I remember being to a lot of your classes very early on. In fact, I'll share a very, very prominent story that me and the guys still laugh about, right? Because you had given us an assignment on interviewing somebody who has a subscription to a digital media service at the time. This was, I want to qualify, this was back in around 2007, 2008.
The prehistoric days of the internet. Yeah.
But yeah, when newspapers were still papers, digital subscriptions to news was a very rare thing, especially in Singapore at the time. And you said, okay, class, go and find someone who has a subscription to a digital news media site and interview them and then come back with your findings.
You couldn't find anyone in Jurong, right?
What I did, the first thing I did was, I asked you, I said, Professor Cherian George, do you have a subscription to a digital news site? He's like, yes, I do, yes. So can I ask you, and you were fuming mad in email, you're like, guys, is this how you're going to go into the working world? If your boss gives you an assignment, are you going to take it back to your boss and ask you to do it? I always remember that. I don't know if you do. You don't, right? You probably said this to
it happened all the time. So,
all the kids.
Yeah. You weren't the only one.
There's very few people who have this sort of expertise in media and politics and that crossover, especially in Singapore. You're one of the few who have that. Given it is election season now, how are the feelings for you? I mean, is it an exciting time for you as a journalist, as an academic?
Oh, I mean, it's exciting, of course. It's exciting at many levels, right? It's exciting as a Singaporean because your country is coming to this event where every adult is involved. It's exciting as an academic who studies politics because most of the time, come on, Singapore is pretty uneventful politically, and suddenly everything happens, within a nine-day period. It's exciting as someone who studies media because, again, in ordinary times, there would be media who are not that interested in politics, and suddenly now everyone is forced to be. So there's a lot to look at, there's a lot to compare and study, and I'm enjoying it.
Why do you think that is, though? That the whole country actually, is so apathetic towards political news until suddenly it's election time. Is it just because of, I don't know, the gossip and all the memes that are coming out, or do you think Singaporeans are genuinely interested in the outcome of their future?
Oh, I mean, great question. I mean, I would look at it the other way. Not so much why are they interested now, but why are they not interested the other 4.7 months out of every 5 months, right?
5 years,
five years, right? That to me is a problem. And in fact, when I listen to many of the frustrations or gripes that Singaporeans have, whether it is about the process or about the media and so on, I think, it tells me that, it's because they're not aware enough that actually many of these problems are due to the fact that we haven't been paying attention the rest of the time, right? So, for example, the frustrations with the boundaries. It is, of course, far too late to feel frustrated once the boundary report is out, right? It is something that citizens have to think about in between elections. Not just 2 months before the elections. So the question for me is always, how do we ensure that Singaporean adults, citizens, have more or less constant interest in the political system?
Why do you think that is, though? Why is it that Singaporeans don't have that constant interest? And by that same token, I'm going to ask you if you're aware if it's different for other nations around the world. Is it?
Partly for good reasons, right? Because most of the time, most things in Singapore work very well. So when things work very well, we just take it for granted. We're not really particularly interested in, is something wrong happening? Who do we blame for it? Is there something wrong in the way power is arranged that accounts for this failure that we see around us? When most things are working well, it's perfectly natural for us not to question the system, not to question power, and just live our lives. Because most of us, all of us, I think, have other things to concern ourselves with on a day-to-day basis, right?
Is it almost as though no news is good news?
Of course,
no need to read.
That's right. Yeah. So there's less interest in news compared with countries where many things are happening that are worrying or problematic or hit you, in very personal and very painful ways. Singapore is free of many of those problems. So that's one reason. The other reason, of course, is that, we have political culture that is deliberately developed to make us really not care. To think instead of how we as families, as households can get by, and not really worry about how the system works. Because, Singapore, yes, is doing well, but it's not the most perfect country in the world. So if you look at, say, the other 10 countries in the world that are equivalent in terms of quality of life and standard of living, the other 9 are more political than we are. Right?
More politically interested.
That's right.
In the news.
So citizens are more engaged and so on than we are. So it suggests to me that you can't say that good government, once it's so good, people will naturally not be interested in politics and government. There isn't the evidence for that. There are many countries with good governments, people are comfortable, but still feel a responsibility to be engaged and to participate in politics.
Let's bring it back to election season based on what you just shared about the way Singaporeans consume media. From a reporting and from a journalistic perspective, how do you think GE 2025 is different than all the other elections that you've experienced so far?
In some ways, not that different. We've seen for the last 20 years since you started voting, right? You've seen.
Why are you this is what
I'm giving away your age.
I get guests who are familiar to me. They try to be too familiar, and they tell everybody that this guy's not that young.
Yeah, well, I have to remind the audience that you're not as young as you look, right? You're not a spring chicken. Yeah, that you have experience behind you.
Okay, right? So 20 years ago, when I first was able to vote, sure, that's Prof, right. Let's go there.
Exact, right? Okay. So actually, some of what we're seeing is not totally new. Mm-hmm. Right? So for the last 20 years, there's been this major shift, this major sort of weakening of the hold that mainstream media have over the public mind, right? There are alternative ways for independent Singaporeans and especially the opposition to reach the public. So that's not something new. Yeah,
especially the opposition you mentioned.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. So that phenomenon has been with us for at least 10, almost 20 years. Mm-hmm. Right. But it's accelerated. There are things that are newer, like, for example, the role of podcasts. Yeah. Yeah. Is something that you didn't see 10, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it is changing a little bit, you feel, but you mentioned mostly for opposition. Why wouldn't the ruling party have that same access or advantage or use the same tools as effectively?
Oh, they are. I mean, my guess is that the ruling party and the government are vastly outspending the opposition in social media and other digital media platforms.
Before the campaigning season?
Of course. That's right.
Okay, because
even during the campaigning season, because they are entitled to a bigger budget since they contest
more seats. Yeah. Ah, okay, yeah, $5 per person.
I haven't done the maths, but I'm sure it works out a lot.
That is what ELD has announced. I think last time it was $4 per voter.
But you raised a good point. This budget applies to that 9-day campaign period. So that is actually a severe underestimate of the amount of money that is actually going into election-related information and campaigning material. Yeah, because a lot of that material would have been prepared before the election season and just recirculated. So there's a bit of a gray zone, right? Which I suspect is quite a big loophole.
Right.
That material produced long before the elections are not actually subject to these spending caps and so on.
Material produced and released also, right? If it's released. Well, okay. Well, I'll give you an example that all the podcasters or content creators who are doing election-related coverage have been briefed about. This is quite important knowledge for everybody from MDDI.
Right.
That, hey, look, if you are, I don't know, if there's any paid content or what you need to declare, if there is any stuff that is going out, it has to go out before cooling off day 2359, before the 2nd of May. We got that email as well to make sure. I guess that makes it the fact that Rishi Report is now legit report, man. It's not just a bunch of clowns.
Yeah, that's
comedians.
Right. You're part of the mainstream.
Oh, man.
You're part of the problem.
We're part of the issue now.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is another example of why I said at the beginning that, it's not enough to think about the infrastructure and the rules of the campaign period. Not enough to think about the campaign period, official campaign period, as if that is where elections are decided, right? So much of what we know, what we believe about the parties and so on, what we know of their positions, including our prejudices about certain people and parties and so on, are shaped long before that 9-day period. Yeah. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the terrain, right? What is the media landscape? Is it impartial, balanced, or strongly skewed to one side that affects this much larger body of election-related or election-relevant material?
And our campaign period, I'm understanding, is mercifully short compared to a lot of nations, right? I think typically it's longer than this period. So it's not that disruptive or not that long a runway.
It's so the official campaign period is short, and there are advantages to that because it means that there's less opportunity for money to become a major factor, right? The longer the campaign period, the greater the advantage in some ways to rich parties. Much harder for independents and small parties to sustain a long official campaign. But again, I want to emphasize that it can be a bit misleading to think in terms of just that official campaign period. So one trend that is happening all over the world, precisely because of the availability of relatively cheap digital ways to reach the public, is that actually in most democracies, it's a 24/7, 365-day-a-year campaign. There's no real distinction between the campaign period and non-campaign period. Politicians are always campaigning. And so once we realize that in fact, major parties, major politicians, anywhere in the world, are in constant campaign mode, then we get a better sense of whether, in fact, the landscape is fair or not. And of course, in Singapore, we have reason to believe that the landscape is particularly unfair, because you have the media organizations with the biggest reach, the biggest platforms, basically being government funded. You asked me what is new about this election. This is significantly new, right? This is the first election in Singapore history where the daily mainstream news media are 100% government funded. We are now the only advanced industrial democracy in the world. The only exceptions are basically communist countries where there isn't non-government, private sector, profit-making, commercial media running daily news. We're the only one. So that is quite a dramatic difference. When you say that for the last couple of years, we've had the major news platforms being government funded.
Do alternative media factor anywhere into this discussion at this point, you think? Given the new landscape that you're talking about.
Right. So that's the silver lining, right? So one of my fears before this campaign was that precisely because the mainstream media landscape is so radically different compared with previous years, we might see the mainstream media, highly distorted and partial towards the PAP, right? I'm very happy to see that my worst fears have not materialized. They know that if the bias becomes too obvious, people are going to leave in droves for the alternative media. And so what you've seen is, I think, again, better than I expected, not ideal, but better than I expected, attempts to appear more fair towards the opposition, including, for example, giving them space for long interviews and so on. So that's, I would say, a silver lining.
You were talking about campaign styles as well a while ago. Talk me through what has caught your eye in terms of the campaign styles of the various parties that are contesting this year. What has been exciting for you, or what you've seen that's a bit noteworthy?
Yeah, I would say more of the same. Nothing radically different from previous cycles. I think since 2011, I'm going to just make a bold assessment here and say that since 2011, the Workers' Party has proven itself as the most effective campaign machine in town. Right? There's really no comparison. Right? This is a party that knows what it's doing when it comes to election campaigns. The PAP, of course, is formidable. But again, since 2011, maybe even earlier, more prone to gaffes, more prone to missteps. Of course, you have to kind of understand that it is always a bit of a disadvantage to be the incumbent. Because you're forced to be on the defensive, right? It is easier in an election for an opposition party to attack than for an incumbent to defend. Yeah, so you got to, I think, sympathize a little bit with the PAP for that. But even so, even discounting for that, I would say that the PAP politicians have shown themselves not to be as nimble as Workers' Party politicians. The other parties, SDP, has always been a very diverse party internally. Some stars, some more interesting candidates that you have observed in your own show recently. You never know what to expect from the SDP, right? And the minor parties, of course, have always been, much weaker in campaigning.
Can I ask your opinion on, you mentioned this, the interesting characters. Just to be clear, I'm assuming you're talking about one of the rallies that SDP had where one of their members went
rogue.
Went a bit
unintentionally.
Unintentionally, but went a bit off script. Let's just put it that way. What do you think an incident like that does to the overall voter perception of SDP as a party if this happens during campaigning period?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. I don't know how it will affect the SDP. Partly because, of course, SDP has always had this image of being a little looser, more internally diverse. I would say that they immediately after that incident, they did all the right things. They owned it. They were very forceful. They made no apologies. And that is in keeping with their reputation of holding on to certain values, especially multiculturalism. In a sense, you could say that they're the most woke party in Singapore. So that's precisely what makes it so ironic, right? This is the most woke party in Singapore doing the most unwoke thing imaginable.
But that goes back to the point you say, there's such a diverse group of people that inevitably you'll find people who are, really not everyone is in the same line and not everyone is on the same wavelength. And like you said, mistakes happen. But to their credit, they crisis managed very quickly.
And this is what, before every election, people will tell me, it's going to be boring and so on. I've never seen a boring election in Singapore because there's always stuff that happens, right? Stuff happens because the cycles are so compressed, right? There's so many people saying so many things, within such a short time, right?
And there's not enough.
It's not possible to script it all.
Yes. Yeah. I was going to say there's not enough time to fact check, or rather, there's not enough time to vet every single action and single word from every single person.
Correct.
And inevitably, these gaps are...
That's right. And so even the PAP gets caught out by that. When I look at some of the gaffes that the PAP in particular has made, and they will form the next government, the worrying signal for me is that, wait, how could they say something or how could they... and often it isn't just a slip of the tongue, when they say it, they mean it. How could they say that and not realize how it's going to land? Yeah. And if I think through it, as someone who cares very much about political communication, and I ask myself, literally, if I set myself this research question, how is it possible that a large organization with very able people are able to make these missteps? I would come to the conclusion that obviously it's not about intelligence, right? These are, IQ for IQ, they are probably superior. It's not about credentials. It's not about the size or the resources of the organization. So what is it? And the conclusion I come to is that it is a symptom of the fact that they are unused to speaking to a crowd of people who may disagree with them. Because after all, this unfortunately is a country without robust media freedoms. It means that the government always has that option to exclude that inconvenient question, right? And so they're unused to this situation, which we see in elections, where suddenly without that ability to manage the response, they are getting comebacks swift and hard. They don't have the kind of internal checks or the antenna that someone like you has developed for predicting what might actually land badly. Yeah, I can't think of any other reason. Which means that the normal work environment is characterized by groupthink, yes men, and so they have become, the antenna are less finely tuned to the fact that, hey, I may say something that me and my friends think, but this is not the right thing to say because it's not going to land well. You know this from personal experience, you know? I mean, you are an A-list celebrity in Singapore now.
What?
Right?
Who said that? Wait a minute.
National Day Parade host, you know, President Star Charity. You're up there, right? You're up there, right?
I'm a C-lister in my own home. Let's just put it that way.
Home is different. We're all C-listers in our own home. But in terms of the public sphere, as a celebrity or an A-lister, but I'm very sure that you have not forgotten, and you know it would be fatal to forget, that if you walk onto a stage in Singapore or in any part of the world, that everyone is going to agree with you and cheer for you, right? I'm sure there's always that understanding that you would have developed very early on as a stand-up comedian, as an actor, and so on. That there's a high chance that there are people in this room that are not rooting for me.
Oh yeah, every night at the comedy club.
They're going to and what happens? Think about how that affects your development as a speaker and as, frankly, as a human being, right? It means your antenna for your own bullshit. Can I use that term?
Yeah, of course, go ahead.
Your antenna for your own bullshit.
You're not running as an MP. So you can say, election rally, if you go and say, hey, what's this bullshit?
Yeah? Bullshit. Exactly, right?
No, please
let's not talk about elephants in the room.
No, that's not. Okay, go on.
Your antenna is very highly tuned, from doing it every day, right? Every day you know that there's a risk that there are going to be people who are going to tell you to your face they don't like you, etc. It means that you have a very keen sense of what will land, what won't land, and you check yourself accordingly. And you probably take the additional step. You surround yourself with people whose judgment you trust to tell you to your face that you're being stupid. My guess is that you would not have gotten this far is if you don't have people around you professionally, right? Your wife is a stand-up comedian too, as I'm sure you rely on her for that, right?
To call me stupid to my face?
Yes.
Daily,
exactly.
Yeah.
Right? Daily. And so professionally, you develop yourself as someone who can make those judgments very quickly. And this dramatically lowers the risk that you will say something stupid, in the heat of the moment.
I understand what you're saying.
When I look at the Pritam Singh and Sylvia Lim, I see that. Yeah. My guess is that their A-level results were not as good as most of cabinet. Yeah. My guess is that their credentials are not as strong. But they have something that the PAP ministers do not have, right? In the case of Sylvia, 22 years chairman of the party, since her late 30s. There's not a week that goes by where she's not attacked, right? What does that do to your instincts, your political instincts, right? What does it do to your ability to modulate your speech, to say the right things, and more importantly, not say the wrong things? Yeah. Pritam has also become a master at that. Yeah. Very seldom does he make a misstep. So it's not intelligence, right? It's not organizational backing. It's your work culture. Yeah. So my sense is that, yes, of course, the PAP ministers are extremely able, they're extremely intelligent. It's a formidable organization, but I think this is what's missing. Yeah.
Based on what you just shared, I had an analogy that I thought about, right? So to me, in Parliament, for example, a lot of these speakers do well, right? They are able to make their points. It's well researched. They have the stats, they have the facts, and then they make a point. And then if there's any debate, it goes on with the Speaker of Parliament kind of refereeing things. So to me, Parliament is almost like Olympic boxing, right? There's a ring, there are rules of engagement, there's a referee to break up the fight if you are making any errors or if you are, fouling. But when it comes to rally speeches, it's like a street fight. the gloves come off. There's no real referee going, sorry, no, this is a Rick and roll. No, you cannot say this guy. You just go there and, you just roll with the punches.
Right.
And perhaps some of the speakers that you mentioned in the opposition, they're more used to the street fight style.
Absolutely.
It could be one of the explanations.
And you raise Parliament, and it's very important to think of that as a factor too, right? Because unlike in many countries where backbenchers of the ruling party have a lot of freedom to criticize their own side, in Singapore, the whip, which is the party disciplinarian, aside from the speaker, the whip is very strong, right? So it has become more uncommon than in the past, in the days when, say, Tan Cheng Bock was a PAP backbencher. It has become much more uncommon to see PAP backbenchers really giving ministers a hard time.
Yeah. I also will ask this question. Do you think that things potentially will change with PM Wong at the helm now? Or do you think that it will remain as is? I mean, he's a younger leader. He's, in a lot of ways, he's from the streets, right? He's a TK Tech boy. I don't know how much of that street fighting analogy he still keeps.
Right.
But, he's a very young leader. Do you think he will try to affect change in a different way than it is currently going? I
mean, on the positive side, the PAP is known to be an adaptive, used to be, I think, quite a pragmatic organization. It will do what works, right? So yes, it is possible that they will realize that they need some of this internal competition and dynamism and what you call street fighter culture happening even within the organization, and that will actually make them robust and stronger to deal, frankly, not just with opposition, because come on, we have a loyal opposition. That's not the problem. To deal with much more formidable external challenges, you need government, ruling party, and an opposition that are ready to roll with the punches, as you say. Otherwise, how in the world are they going to defend our interests elsewhere? So yes, it is entirely possible, and this is an argument that my friend Donald Lowe and I made in a book 5 years ago called PAP versus PAP, shameless plug there, right? Where we said that, yes, of course it is within the PAP's reach, right? To in a sense, rediscover some of what I think was already in their genes, this adaptive ability, right? To re-engineer itself, to recognize that it may have developed an organizational culture that is too self-protective, too coddling, and that this, which they've convinced themselves is the only way to attract talent, may have had the unintended effect of making even talented people weaker because they're not exposed to this constant daily challenge of dealing with freewheeling criticism.
I invite everybody who would like to develop a thick skin, please join me at the open mic at the Lemon Stand. That's how you deal with rejection on a daily basis, and that makes your skin very thick. You're ready for anything. One part, the rally speeches, right, within this campaigning period, because they don't happen all within the 5 years. They don't happen at all.
Well, rally speeches, but also doorstop interviews and so on.
Okay. So it's not just
the rally speech.
And I'm just guessing, but this short period of time with those effective speeches, with those effective public persona, can get you into a position where you can do this other job. But is everybody ready to translate that into a 5-year term or not? I don't know. I mean, this is the question that I have in my mind, And if someone is unable to do that, right? For example, the examples you gave, if someone is unable to communicate effectively, does that make them a weaker MP, incapable of being in parliament or in cabinet? Or do you have to have a balance of both?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, that's a great point. And of course, Singaporeans would be, it would be unwise to be too seduced by performance, right? But my impression is that Singaporeans, say, compared with most publics that I'm familiar with are less prone to being seduced by showmen, right? If anything, I find Singaporeans almost suspicious of charisma.
Wow.
Yeah.
Suspicious of charisma.
Yeah, when it comes to their political leaders. If someone is, in fact, Lawrence Wong said something at the Fullerton rally, which I think resonated. I looked around me and I saw people nodding and smiling. He said, if something seems too good to be true, it probably is, right? And there were nods of agreement around him. So I think Singaporeans are skeptical enough, sensible enough to treat showmanship with a pinch of salt. Yeah. They're not going to be soul coyote so easily, right? So I don't think it's showmanship that impresses them, but I do feel Singaporeans are able to detect sincerity, and sincerity can come across in many ways. Yeah,
they can sense bullshit. To
absolutely
quote you earlier,
correct.
They can sense bullshit from a mile away.
That's right.
Which is something that I think, I agree with you. I think Singaporeans are discerning enough to sense bullshit from a mile away, especially young voters, young people. Now, in this context, young voters.
You young people always think the young are smarter.
Okay, you know what, Prof? Why don't you hold that thought for a moment before we go into the next discussion? Let's take a short break to hear these messages from our sponsors. No, I'm joking. There's no sponsors. It's just me doing stand-up comedy. It's just me promoting my own work. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Enjoy this clip. We'll be right back.
You know who've been messaging me? Middle-aged Indian uncles. They're like, hey, Rishi, now you got six-pack ready. Saap soup, What the f*** is saap soup? I don't know what saap soup is, man. It's some boomer Indian uncle language. Saap soup! You know what I understand from saap soup? Saap soup means like on the sly. You didn't tell anybody, you quietly went to saap soup, kana six-pack. The other one they use is gudaba, gudaboo. These are not words in any language, they are just sounds that middle-aged drunk Indian men make. You gotta go with the emotion. You've met Irish people, you can't understand their English either, right? But you get the emotion. Saap, soom, gadaba, gadaboo. Gadaba, gadaboo is used in two main situations. One, if you are involved in a fight. Two, if you're getting some action. Oh, yesterday you and a girl, gadaba, gadaboo, huh? Yalla, bro. Then her husband came home, I saap, soup, jumped out the window.
Let me take you into a little bit of scenarios that the various constituencies are having in terms of fights, right? Marine Parade, Bradle Heights, GRC.
My town.
You want to share your town, yeah. Disappointing for you that
of
you
course, yes,
didn't
yes.
get to exercise.
Right.
There's been some discussion on various camps that Alamak Workers' Party was supposed to contest. They didn't contest. There's so many things going on. Other opposition parties are commenting on it. People are saying that, oh man, they should have sent a team there. The flack that they are getting, do you think that's fair criticism?
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think people are generally disappointed and so on. But the Workers' Party is entitled to make its calculations, right? I think the Workers' Party has earned over time some benefit of the doubt, right? Because you can't, nothing succeeds like success, right? And you can't argue against its winning record, right? Then Singapore has no shortage of armchair critics, who will think that they could, that smarter at politics would do this and that and so on. Why didn't you put this person there and that person there and so on, right? But yeah, and they may be right.
Can I qualify that you're not talking about me? Because I've never been, I don't even have an armchair,
right,
Prof.
Yeah.
This is...
It's more like a gaming thing,
This
right?
is,
Even
yeah,
worse.
we are
Even
younger.
worse. You think it's a video game.
We're just playing games here. Not even in real life. It's all just games to us. I don't know.
So,
Please carry on.
yeah, so it's fair enough. I mean, again, that's what makes the spectator sport of elections fun, right? You can have your own fantasy league and, your
MVPs.
play around. Exactly. Sure, right? But, for all said and done, I would still kind of reserve judgment because I've made that mistake before. I've thought, why is the Workers' Party being so tame? Why are they doing this and not that, etc., etc. And then you look at their record, hey, they've done what no other opposition party has done, right? So until it's proven that another way works, I would say, oh yeah, maybe we spectators should just step back, watch, and see if indeed the coach actually has a plan that is going to work. So I don't know.
Punggol GRC is another one that seems to be a hotly contested area, a hotly contested constituency. There's only two teams that are fighting there. Workers' Party has sent a new 4-person team to take on a very formidable PAP team. Talk me through your thoughts on what's going on there. What do you think might happen, or what do you think of the whole situation unfolding?
Right. Yeah, a very interesting choice before Punggol voters, right? So on the one hand, you have 3 office holders, against, newbies on the other side. How will this play? Right, you think that the 3 office holders have a huge advantage, and the PAP has been making this a point. Right, you don't want to lose these people that are indispensable for government. I think the Workers' Party has quite cleverly turned that argument on its head by saying that, well, if these 3 office holders are going to be busy with their downtown jobs, will they actually be doing much for you in Punggol? Number one. Number two, if the DPM was so indispensable, why was he sent to a hot seat? And so, and who knows how these arguments will play. But I think it's a fascinating race there.
It's very interesting. But I don't know for sure if everybody completely understands the weight of the decision they have on their shoulders. Is there any weight in this decision? Is it really going to change their lives, you think, depending on who they vote for?
No individual vote will, but of course, collectively, it has a big difference, right? And that's the mystery and the magic of elections. Yeah, one vote out of 2+ million seems like a drop in the ocean, but collectively things move as a result of that single vote, and nobody knows what's going to happen on Saturday. The as for how weighty a decision this is, and how should people even what even are the questions that the voters should be asking? Candidates will have their own opinions. I believe very strongly that voters don't just have control over what answer they're going to deliver on polling day. They also have complete control over which question is relevant. Yeah, this is something candidates should have the humility to respect. Yeah, because sometimes you have candidates. You usually have candidates on every side saying that you have this one vote, use this vote to answer this question. Yeah, so the PAP typically will say, use your vote to answer the question, who do you want to run Singapore? Don't play. The opposition will say, use your one vote to decide how much opposition you have in parliament, right? And then you have candidates saying, use your one vote to decide what kind of town you want to live in. Yeah. Others will say it is illegitimate, it is wrong for you to use your one vote for something to do with foreign affairs, like Gaza. Wait, is it wrong? Why isn't it wrong? Well, what is wrong with a voter saying that I am a citizen of Singapore, Singapore is part of the global community, I want to use my vote to tell my government how I feel about one of the most pressing global issues that my generation is facing, whether it is the genocidal campaign in Gaza or climate change. That matters to me, and that is a question that I'm going to ask myself, right? when I decide who I should vote for. What is wrong with that? Right? That decision to make that your question is as legitimate as the voter who says, no, I'm going to ask who is going to give me more childcare services and linkways in my constituency where I have kids and aged parents to look after. And as legitimate as those who say, no, I'm going to ask myself the question, how do I show 4G that I really want to cheer them on? Also legitimate.
So
I want to use my vote to answer the question, how much opposition do I have? Perfectly legitimate question. Yeah, this is the sacred right of all voters to decide what question we want to answer.
In a democracy, you're saying
in a democracy,
it is all valid.
It's all valid because after all, the system only gives us one vote to answer all these questions. If politicians of all parties feel that no, some questions are wrong, some questions are right, then give us more choices. Give us more ways to make those those choices, right? For example, organize local elections for mayor, right, and town council, so that we can decide that question at local elections, national elections to decide who we want to run for government. Yeah, make the processes of foreign policy formulation more open, participatory, so that we can make our voices heard there. Yeah, but we don't have such a system. Right? So why blame voters that they're going to take questions that they care about and answer it on Saturday?
Thank you for sharing those thoughts. Appreciate that. Journalism is something that I understand and I know for a fact is a field that is very dear to you. Something that you you still teach, you still educate, you still study. You're an academic, a scholar, media and politics are the fields that you focus on. Do you think that the future of journalism in Singapore is something you look forward to? Is it bright? Or what do you see it as?
I think it will improve over time because I just cannot conceive of how it cannot improve, right? Simply because we are, number one, our population is getting better educated. It's already spectacularly well educated, right? Very sophisticated, cosmopolitan, aware population that is hungry for quality information, number one. Number two, Singapore and the world is not getting any less complex, right? So no matter how intelligent we are, we need kind of go-betweens to help us make sense of all the information out there. Sometimes I feel Singaporeans and many people, smart people around the world, kid themselves and say that, hey, all the information I want is out there already, right? So I don't need journalists as the go-between. They're kidding themselves, right? Because what we don't have is time, right? We don't have the time to, in the case of the elections, go and monitor all the different parties' websites, multiple rally videos, read all the manifestos. We don't. Let's admit it. Yeah, we need someone to do that grunt work for us, synthesize, compare, and in a professional, unbiased way, tell us, look, here are the main differences, here are the main similarities. Yeah. So, for example, my friend Kirsten Han has done that. She's read every single manifesto, right? As like a model citizen journalist. Yeah. And she has put all that information in accessible form online. Yeah. That's the kind of service that journalism can do. How is that going to be irrelevant? Of course, it's going to continue to be relevant, right? We also need people to go places where we wouldn't normally. Yeah. So your form of journalism is a talk show, but it's obviously not enough, right? We need people to go and listen to hours in Parliament. We need people to show up at press conferences, ask questions, and so on, which I take it is not stuff that you do. Yeah.
Not at this point.
Not at this point, right? So we need professional journalists to do that too. Yeah. So the need is obviously there. Yeah. And I think at some point, Singaporeans, I hope, will realize that this is something worth paying for as well. Yeah, because that's the other big myth, right? That we need journalism, but somebody's going to give it to us for free. Right? Cannot. You've got to pay for it.
2007, like I said, the story was about paid subscription to digital news. It was paid then. It's a lot of it is still paid now. Final message as we go into the polls on the 3rd of May, especially for the young voters out there, people who perhaps are voting for the first time, people who maybe have a little bit of political apathy leading into this journey of adulting, if you will. What would you say to them?
Well, maybe I'll go back to my first point, which is that, if you felt a certain buzz, a certain awakening during the elections and felt, okay, actually politics is kind of important, right? The debates that we hear resonate with me. Don't let go of that on Saturday, 3rd of May. Right. Remember that politics is a year-round, lifelong thing. Maintain an interest. Of course, we can't maintain that kind of intensity of interest that we have right now. Yeah, but it's possible to just continue to read once a week and to watch good podcasts a couple of times a week and so on. That's right. And just maintain that interest as a citizen, because that's our responsibility, right? It is our responsibility as citizens.
Thank you so much for making time, Prof. I appreciate it. And thank you for inspiring a generation of journalists and
non-journalists.
And comedians.
That's right.
As well. Thank you very much. That was Professor Cherian George joining me on a very special episode here. Folks, that brings us to the end of the first season of the Rishi Report SG60 podcast series. We hope you've enjoyed this journey with us. I embarked on this project to learn a bit more about the current climate in Singapore, given its general elections in 2025. And I hope you've had an opportunity to learn a bit more about some of the wonderful guests that we've had through the studio doors, maybe a little bit about their convictions, their motivations, what they stand for, and perhaps who they are as people. We've had politicians come through from the ruling party. We've had opposition candidates, independent candidates. We've also had some non-partisan, independent political commentators, comedians, academics, and you've had me, a stand-up comedian from Singapore, just trying to figure out his place in this entire story. If you enjoyed what you saw here, we will be back for a second season closer to Singapore's 60th birthday, where we will be talking to some interviewees who have had a marked impact on Singapore in the past 60 years. If there's any guest that you think fits that profile, please let us know. If you've got any comments about how you think the show has gone, what more you'd like to see, please leave them in the comment section as well. There is not going to be a post-election analysis episode. Some of you have asked me about that. The reason for that is that this is one of those series where you, the audience, goes out and writes the ending. May 3rd, polling day, you go out, you exercise your democratic right, and you tell us how this particular series ends. We look forward to continuously entertaining you and informing you on the Rishi Report. Those of you who've been a part of this journey, thank you very much. I've been Rishi Budhrani, and we'll see you for Season 2.